Washington, D.C. is a city bustling with activity and rich with history. On this episode of Recollecting Carter, I take a tour with public historian Rebecca Fachner of some historical sites that highlight Jimmy and Rosalyn Carter around America's capital.
I, Jimmy Carter, do solemnly swear the time for racial discrimination is over, that I will faithfully execute an undiminished, ever-expanding American dream, the office of President of the United States.
The struggle for human rights overrides all differences of color or nation or language.
And will, to the best of my ability,
It is a crisis of confidence.
preserve, protect, and defend
To remove the light of war, the threat of war, would be the overwhelming dream that I would have.
the Constitution of the United States.
We will not learn how to live together in peace by killing each other's children.
So help me God.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Fachner. I am a historian and tour guide in Washington, D.C. I have a podcast of my own, Tour Guide Tell All. We talk about scandals and history and politics and all kinds of fun things, but I'm based in Washington. I talk a lot about the presidents for my job, and that's kind of where I am.
The first stop on our tour was at the National Portrait Gallery. Through the marble pillars and security checkpoints, we made our way up several flights of stairs in search of Carter's portrait.
So, obviously they're in order. It's pretty easy. The one thing to note is that other than Lincoln, Carter's is the only portrait where he's definitely in a room in the White House. Like, James Buchanan's in a room, but it could be any room. And you'll see a bunch of them, they're like at a desk or whatever. But Carter's the only one who's like chosen to be clearly in a defined room.
What's the history behind that?
It was interesting to me, and I looked a lot into it. What they're trying to do with this portrait is Carter wants to be seen in the Oval. This is the seat of power. Like, he's in command, he's the commander-in-chief. And what's so interesting to me about this portrait is it's the central tension for me with Carter's presidency is intention versus execution. And that's really evident in this portrait. He wants to be seen in command. He's in the Oval, in the seat of power, where he makes decisions, where he sends people into harm's way. He's surrounded by, you can clearly tell that that's supposed to be Ben Franklin and George Washington. He's got his hand on the desk, leader of his party, leader of the country, all that power. But what ends up happening with this, they want to show him in command, but because they want to show so much of the Oval, he looks diminished in the portrait. And so he looks small in comparison to this massive room that he's in. The expression, the fact that he's got his hand in his pocket looks almost questioning, diffident, sort of uncertain. Even his stance, he's very straight. There's no stride to this. There's no movement. He's very still. He's not moving. He looks very thin. He looks diminished. And so that's, I think, what a really central tension of Carter, for me, is he wants to do the right thing, has a lot of good intentions, but the execution of it just doesn't quite work.
It's kind of a metaphor for the way that we remember his presidency now.
Yes, very much.
Next, we stepped outside on a gorgeous spring day to head a few blocks south down 8th Street toward a D.C. landmark with a unique connection to Carter. So where are we standing right now?
We are standing in the Naval Memorial. So this is in the center of Washington, D.C. We're across from the National Archives where the Constitution is, and that's where they chose to put the Naval Memorial, central. What you're seeing is the lone sailor. You're seeing the map of the world, but inverted. So because it's the Navy, the sea is highlighted as opposed to the land. I chose this spot for two reasons. One, obviously, Carter's went to the Naval Academy. He had a Navy career, the only president of the United States to go to Annapolis, although not the only to serve in the Navy. And I also chose this particular spot because it's on the inaugural parade route. So that's behind us. What's behind us is Pennsylvania Avenue. And to this day, inaugurations, when they do an inauguration, they parade down Pennsylvania Avenue. Carter's inauguration is really unique in a couple of ways. First of all, he has the last inauguration on the east lawn of the Capitol. Reagan's going to move it to the west lawn, which which is where we're familiar with seeing it today. Carter also is going to have business dress at his inauguration, not formal wear. That's something Reagan does away with and goes back to the formal wear, which we have to this day. Carter wants a more relaxed inauguration. He also is going to get out at the beginning of the parade route and insist in 28-degree weather on walking with his wife the entire way down the parade route, which is about 1.5 miles down Pennsylvania Avenue. So it really sets the tone in so many ways for Carter's presidency, what he's trying to do, outreach to the people. You're seeing the idea of a more laid back and relaxed presidential style. You're also seeing Carter makes a very lovely appeal to his predecessor, Gerald Ford, at the beginning of his inauguration. So he's appealing to forgiveness and healing. We want to bring the country together. That's kind of what Carter's big deal is when he's starting out. And so you're seeing that from the very beginning. The Naval Memorial, his career in the Navy is so important, particularly to him and Rosalyn. They move around a good bit. And so I thought that this was a good spot to kind of talk about that. But the real nugget, the parade route, the inauguration sort of sets the tone for his whole presidency, not in just what he's trying to do, but what he actually does do and how the press receives it. The press is not especially warm to the idea of this more relaxed style. Carter tries to play down the inaugural balls. That's not well received. They want a big party in Washington. And so that's going to be a part of what happens with Carter. And so you're seeing the beginning of the media really being unfriendly to him as soon as he takes office.
En route to our last stop, we crossed Pennsylvania Avenue and made our way to one of the many Smithsonian museums that line the National Mall. I asked Rebecca about President Carter's relationship with Rosalyn and the often underappreciated influence that First Ladies have on shaping the presidency.
I mean, I honestly think we should talk more about First Ladies overall, but particularly in Rosalynn Carter's case, she's such the evolution of their relationship, not just during their presidency, but their whole evolution is so interesting. And she really does a lot of modernization of the office.
He seemed to really go out of his way to support that,
Yes.
yeah, like to elevate her. Like, he's arguably the first president to go out of his way to elevate what she's doing and kind of change that.
I absolutely do. I think that that's very important. I think the strength of their bond is important. Like, if you look at presidents, this isn't 100% true, but generally if they have a good, strong bond with their spouse, they tend out to be a better president. And the weaker ones tend to either have not had a spouse or just not a great relationship. And I think his bond with Rosalyn, like, when you get to that level, you need somebody who can tell you that you're full of it, because so many people won't.
The Museum of American History provided a fitting end to our tour. Carter connections can be seen in many exhibits highlighting diverse topics, from foreign diplomacy to the history of recorded sound. But continuing our discussion of the central role that First Lady Rosalyn played in her husband's presidency, it was an exhibit highlighting her that truly captured the zeitgeist of the Carter years.
We are in the First Lady's dress exhibit in the American History Museum. The First Lady's inaugural ball gowns from their husband's first or only inauguration are in chronological order. So Rosalynn Carter's, Nancy Reagan's, Barbara Bush's, etc. Rosalynn Carter's dress is really unique. It's very 70s. It's very of its moment. She reuses this dress. So this is actually the dress that she's going to wear when Jimmy gets inaugurated as governor of Georgia. She figures in 1977, as they're preparing for the inauguration, the Carters want a more dressed down sort of vibe. They want something a little more, not casual, that's the wrong characterization, but more everyman. And so rather than have the inaugural committee spend a lot of money on a couture gown, she says, well, I already have one. It fits, it looks really great, and it does. Why don't I just wear that? And so it symbolizes home economics. We're in the midst of the economy's a little iffy. Why don't we just reuse something? Thinking that this would appeal. Why have the American people spend extra money for the First Lady to show up in a couture gown? However, it backfires massively on both of the Carters. She she is lambasted in the press. She doesn't understand the office she has assumed. She doesn't understand her husband's office. She doesn't respect the office. How dare she reuse and recycle something? That's just not done. She's no longer the First Lady of Georgia. She's now the First Lady of the United States. And she gets hit very hard in the press for this right out of the gate. And it's a really unfair, I think, hit. I think the press does not do the Carters any favors in this moment. They're trying to do something really nice, and it's painted as disrespectful and almost like they're rubes coming from, nowhere to the White House. And it just is a really unfortunate illustration of sort of where the country is. And you can see the next dress over is Nancy Reagan's inaugural ball gown from 4 years later. It's glamorous, it's couture, it's sequins. You're immediately seeing the shift to Hollywood glamour. And so you're seeing the shift in the culture from more traditional, the Carters and their Plains, Georgia beginnings, to Nancy Reagan and Hollywood, glamour, glitz, the 80s. And so you're seeing that cultural shift almost in real time happening with these two dresses. And so that's kind of what I think about with Rosalyn Carter's. It's a lovely dress. It's very 70s, but it's lovely. She looked lovely in it. It's very appropriate for a woman of her age. It's very appropriate for a first lady, but it's seen as casual. It's seen as disrespectful. It's seen as not glamorous enough. And so that's what you're seeing here is a sort of metaphor for the entire Carter presidency. They're not trying hard enough. They're not working hard enough. They aren't glamorous enough. And you can see immediately that shift to Reagan with the opera length gloves and the very Hollywood glitz. And so that's what this cultural moment is between the late 70s and the early 80s.
Recollecting Carter is produced by me, Jason Lee Guthrie, with support from Georgia Humanities and the Liebner Cooper Family Foundation. Original music and sound design by Joel Corey. Logo design by Whitney Matheson. Archival media provided by the Carter Center. Special thanks to my intern Michael Smith and my students at Clayton State University who have contributed to this podcast. You can connect with the show online at recollectingcarter.com.